That's it. Perfect. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being on time and joining us right before the holidays. I picked up Mexico as the destination because I don't know, so many of us are heading there for the holidays. I thought it will be an interesting perspective to know what's going on from an urban design perspective and addressing some of the really unique challenges through urban design. If we've never met before, and maybe you're joining us from Mexico, I'm Nama Blonder. I'm an architect and urban designer with Smart Density. We host these roundtables once every quarter. We used to do them under like a certain urban design topic, and this year we changed it. We mixed it up a little bit to make it by a country or a country. The first one was in India in September. So if you're interested in watching that, let me know and I'll send you a link. And now we are in Mexico and we're joined here. Well, Erin is actually in Toronto, but Ana Paula and Monica are joining us from Mexico. So thank you very much for joining us. We have 3 presentations, 10 minutes each, and then some Q&A. Erin, the stage is yours.
Thank you, Nama. Okay, perfect. So first of all, my name is Erendira Tranquilino. I'm an architect from Mexico City. And after my bachelor degree in architecture, I worked for 12 years in Mexico. And then I decided to move to Toronto to study a master degree in urban design. I've been always interested in climate change and water issues in the city, in Mexico City. So I did my thesis research based on this topic, and I assume this is part 1 of this project, and part 2 is going to be an educational interactive media that I'm going to develop next year related to this same topic. It's going to be an educative tool because I believe that education leads to awareness and awareness leads to change. So let's go. So these are the topics of some of the most known media about the water crisis in Mexico City. So Mexico City is one of the most important cultural centers in the world, the most populous city in North America with 22 million people, of which 62% lives in poverty. Today, Mexico City faces one of the world's worst water crises. The 2 main sources of water supply are about to run out. If no action is taken, day 0 may arrive. So what few people know is that 500 years ago, most of this territory was a lake. So how to erase a lake? In this year was when the Spanish conquered Tenochtitlan, and from this moment, the drainage of the water begins. This is Mexico City today. And this graphic shows something interesting. It's a relationship between the water surface in the city and the population growth. And as you can see, the difference is critic. So how to water a dry basin? How does it work today? First, Mexico City is located in an endorheic basin, defined as a region in which the river network is completely isolated from the world ocean. The water flowing in the rivers never reaches the sea. So the first water source is from outside the basin, and it's called Lerma-Cutzamala system, which supplies 40% of the water demand. The system consists in 7 dams outside the basin, where the water is pumped 322 kilometers. And 40% of water is lost due to leaking pipes, 40%. Today, these dams are only at 37 of their capacity. The second water source is the aquifers, and it supplies 60% of our water demand. Located in the south, they occupy 17% of the surface of this endorheic basin. Today, these aquifers are overexploited by 215% without being recharged. And then comes the rain. It rains more than London. And it rains 3 times our water demand in Mexico City. This is an image normal for us of a rainy day in summer in Mexico City. But if you go to another country and live in another country, that's not normal. We are so fortunate, like nature is giving us all the water. But sadly, all this water is disposed, and after mixing with the raw sewage of the city, all the water goes outside the basin. When the water reaches the Mesquital Valley, part of the water is used for agriculture, and the rest goes to the Tula River, and in the end, it goes to the sea. And that's how we get rid of all our water. Nothing stays inside the basin. So this graphic shows the water journey in terms of amount and topography. And we can look the 7 dams at the beginning of this graphic. We can look the topography, how much energy we need to pump all this water to get the water inside the basin. Then we lost 40% of it, and then we gain water again through rain and through the aquifers. And then we mix all this water and take it out. And that's the problem. The aquifers are not being recharged. And by removing all the water from the basin and having impervious pavement on the entire surface, they are being overexploited. All rainwater is contaminated with drainage, and the drainage system is at its total capacity and on the edge of collapsing. Water management in Mexico City, as you can see in this diagram graphic, is a linear and extractive system. It should follow the natural cycle, the natural circle cycle. We should keep this water. We should reuse this water. So who has the power to make changes in the water management? First, the government. Its tool is to improve water infrastructure. Then the media as an educational tool to communicate about water. The construction sector with the implementation of technologies and criteria that allow water harvesting, and the citizens. It is a small scale, however, its impact is large scale. So what are the consequences? This is a normal view for Mexican citizens. This is a picture of Mexico City's downtown, but it's not normal. The city is sinking. Due to the overexploitation of the aquifers, Mexico City sinks up to 40 centimeters annually. And as one of the territories in the world where it rains the most, flooding is one of the city's biggest problems. And this is a hard picture to look at if you are from Mexico City. But for us, our biggest fear is an earthquake. Not a fire as here in Canada. In there is an earthquake because we are living on mud. And not just that, because of the aquifers and all the extraction of them, there are neogeological faults inside the city, which can generate earthquakes with an epicenter within the capital and worsen the earthquakes that come. And the worst, thirst. In a city where the percentage of population living in poverty is 62%, where 37% of households are victims of crime each year, is water going to be the new gold? Or are we going to care today? So this was a brief summary of my thesis project at U of T, in Daniel's faculty. And the following steps will be in this website, I hope, at the end of next year. So thank you so much, and I will leave you with Ana Paula.
Thank you, Ere. So let me share my screen. So that was a great introduction about the water crisis that we have in Mexico City. And now I'm going to talk about a little bit about a project that we've been working here in Mexico City as well. in which we're treating a topic that it's community planning and the role of urban planners in guiding the private sector to create inclusive and sustainable communities. My name is Ana Paula, and I work at SVN, which is an urban planning firm that it's based in Mexico City. And this is a little bit a map showing the projects that we've been working in the few years here in the whole country. And we've been treating different topics, but we've also been working with the private sector and the public sector. And something that we've been realizing in these few years is that what happens a lot in Mexico is that most of the times, or many times, the government doesn't have the resources or sometimes the tools to decide where the city is going to grow or how the city is going to grow. So we think that urban planners have a big influence in the type of communities that we want to build, since we want this city to keep growing and contributing to social, environmental, and economic goals. So these are some of the projects that we've been working in the recent years. These have all been done with the private sector. And as we can see, there are large-scale portions of territory, So today I'm going to talk specifically about San Mateo and the state of Mexico and the experience that we had with our client. And the thing that we started to create here was four main strategies. So the first one was about recognizing and contributing to the existing water systems. And as Ere was explaining before, we come from a history where the city used to sit on a lake, and today most of the water bodies have been gone, So what is the responsibility as us, as urban planners, to see how the city keeps growing? So as you can see, this is what the ancient bed lake used to sit. This is the downtown area, and our site is located here in one of the ravines. And these ravines that are located in the west side of the city are really important ravines since they have their own ecological function. This area has been serving for infiltrating water into the aquifer, and as Ere was explaining, it's really important for us to keep infiltrating this water since it avoids the subsidence, and it's also the 70% of the water that it's consumed in the city. So the first thing that we did for the project was analyzing the different landscapes of these ravines, and also recognizing the site's natural runoffs, understanding where is the water coming from, how is it flowing through these different ravines, and where is it going. So the challenge here was about how to merge the urban development with the ecological systems, So for this, what we did is that we applied different water strategies into the site, in which we decided how to add some floodable parks on the lower parts of the ravine to mitigate flooding. We also added the activities of reforestation along the runoffs. Very important having the infiltration lakes in the higher parts of the ravines as well as the bioswales. And also having all these rainwater harvesting on larger roofs, So these were some of the strategies that we started to apply to our project, and they were intervening the different configurations of the master plan, on the roads, on the canals, on the roofs. And this is a little bit about one of the renderings that we had proposed, where we keep the river that runs on the lower part of the ravine, and then we also do some reforestation on the water edges. We create a trail network to connect the open spaces and have the whole community live into these green areas, The next one was utilizing the topography to shape a series of open spaces through the project. And what we did here was, the first thing was analyzing how the ravines were confronted. And what we saw there was that we have these really big slopes, no? And there were some parts that were unbuilt areas and other ones that were built areas. And we also realized that most of the vegetation was located on these unbuilt areas. So that helped us to start working with the topography, creating connections like vertical connections, outdoor stairs, having the topography to allow us to have these green connections. And this was a great strategy because at the end, the ravines became the living green spaces. These would become the natural scenery for the own development. So these would be like natural areas that would not need irrigation. Like there were systems that would live by their own. And this is one of the renderings that you can see how the different buildings were set into the topography, how we had these floatable parks on the lower areas, and then activated through open space and public space. Then our third strategy was how to plan an integrated mixed community. And we know that this municipality has been having a lot of economic growth in the recent years. And this is a lot inherited by the industrial sector that it's located in this northern part of the city. And then we also have a lot of housing in the area, But we wanted to create a mixed-use community, Here the client, they had these different investors that were interested in the site. So one of the things that were part of the talk with our clients since the beginning was like how to create a mix of hubs, that could integrate in the same place, And this is something very innovative for the area, Like we know most of the new areas of the city become only like housing areas, And then most of the people keep coming for work to the center of the city. So this was kind of like an idea of trying to have a polycentric city, like creating areas where people can live, work, and socialize. So on one side, the client had a university that was interested in the site. They also had a film studio that wanted to stay to invest in the area. They also knew that there was this new opportunity about creating a program of senior living. So that was like the health and wellness. And then we could also have some innovation and technology adjacent to the industrial sector that was located in the site. So this became a really interesting exercise on how to create this possible program scenarios, and how the different uses would integrate and work along together in the site, And then, so what ended up happening is that we had this master plan where you would have like this urban corridor, which was more like a mixed-use corridor. Then we would have like the film studio, the university. So the idea was for students to go to that urban corridor and have some retail there, but then also having these open spaces with the ravines, having different variety of typologies, which also that was a great study because of the topography of the site. And this is like a rendering of our film studio and how it integrates with different levels of the topography. And as part of the last strategy was how to create community spaces to ensure social inclusion. And this, we thought that was a really important topic since we know that there's a big effort in tackling inequality here in the city, as Ere was mentioning as well. So what we did is that we proposed 3 different community hubs along the project. One was located like the urban park at the north, the university hub at the center, and then we had a community center on the south of the project. And I think this one was the most interesting one since we had some informal settlements next to our site. And talking with the client, we thought about having this different program, in which we would give some social infrastructure to all these urban dwellers, no? So what we did is that we created a community center, a community library, and a park. So that way we could connect and give some services and social infrastructure to the rest of the city. So you can see here also one of the renderings, and this was a really nice rendering because also it was strategically placed on the site so that we could see the rest of the city. And this would be all. I think it was a really interesting project that we did. This was a really concept design, but it was a nice exercise to work along with the private sector and see which are other ways to plan the city, you know, because at the end we might think that these are only enclosed developments, but at the end we're also creating the city, you know. So I think it was a really successful exercise. And thank you, everyone. And I'll pass it to Monica now.
Hi, let me share my screen. Hello. Hello, my name is Monica Sos. I'm an urban designer and an architect based in Mexico City. I've been running my own firm in Mexico for the last 7 years. From the ones both of my colleagues presented, I'm very interested in. My firm is very interested in, for example, the resilience and the water management for Mexico City and climate change and mobility in the city. I wanted to present a corridor, a master plan for a transit center development, community spaces, and resilience. It's a very small site, so it's kind of controversial, but we thought it was a really good opportunity to actually implement and prove our hypothesis. So this is the corridor, the site they gave us is strategically located between the Mexico City center and the new airport, the AIFA, the one that the military did. No? So the client actually was public, and it was a really small site right next to the highway. So on one side it had like industrial parks, and on the other side it has communities with housing, low-income communities. So it is designed as a transportation
Monica,
hub.
we're not seeing your presentation.
No.
No.
Por.
There it is. No.
Pero.
We're now at page 3. We can see page 3.
Should I present it in?
Yeah, you can do.
Can you see it now?
We can see your screen. The slide is number 3.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Yes, I'm
Yes.
sure it's okay. Yeah. So
Okay.
we did. It was a challenge because we work with the public sector, actually the military. So we did a very deep analysis so we could actually fundament our theories and what we were gonna prove. So this is a regional analysis about the urban and how the city and the public transport in the city has expanded. All the water systems in Mexico and the environmental analysis. I'm gonna go through this very fast. And this is really interesting because it's
We're just
actually
seeing page 3 still.
Okay. So I'm gonna do it here.
Yeah, better. There we can see it.
Yeah, I don't like it, but doesn't matter. So this is a map showing all the future projects that the military and the public sector and the private sector were gonna implement in the following years. And this is the site. So you can see it's a very small site right next to the highway. Where we analyze the flood risk and the mobility system that we're gonna go through it. Actually, it was the suburban train, the industrial train, a mobility tram, the tram that was gonna be located right here, and the airport that was gonna be located in the north. It's actually already built. So our opportunities were to implement strategies that actually detonate the economic activity of the area because it's surrounded by very low income housing, but also give a space within the huge mega scale site, give a human scale so the adjacent communities could have community and public spaces, etc. No? So although the project is small, it is significant for its comprehensive approach, combining hydrological, social, economic, and transportation-oriented development solution. So what we wanted to implement in terms of water as a grading axis, we used all the recital spaces within the master plan to implement water strategies in terms of capturing sorry. So where we want to show here, the diagram that shows here is that actually the corridor and the master plan we are planning actually represents a huge opportunity to connect in a local, regional, national, and even global site. So we wanted to give the airport extra facilities and with for people because the airport city was high-end economically, and we wanted to present people and the population living nearby and the future employees of the airport with opportunities and places to be. So our main strategic axis was a space that is flexible and adaptable through time. It is the access for the new airport, actually. It proposes a permeable system in terms not only in pedestrian, but also it connects both sides of the highway, and it creates system of open spaces and commercial spaces. This is a drawing showing the opportunity that a mid-scale project represents in terms of being able to prove and actually implement and replicate the projects along different places. So here you can see the complex form of the master plan and some of the design strategies we actually use in terms of water. The master plan included after a market analysis, the project includes several programs, but like hotel, housing, and also programs that are going to be servicing the future airport. But we wanted to give the opportunity, actually give the communities alongside the highway public spaces that actually become sponge in terms of water that capture and infiltrate the water and actually treat it so the communities alongside go get benefits and also the master plans, no? So we use the landscape and the small parts lots that gave us to implement different strategies in terms of landscape to actually change the scale of the city and implement water strategies. So here you can see the part within the both sides of the highway where we implement actually like terms of water resilience, but also we use nature from the area, so it is actually resilient. And we also propose a buffer between the commercial area and the housing and the urban equipment and the highway. These are some of the, this is from the parks, this is some of the renderings showing how we imagine the place and how it's gonna be. I know it looks kind of car driven, but it's actually what they required us to do, and I think that's it. Thank you.
And I am back. Wow, that was, I really enjoyed the presentations. Thank you so much. We have some questions. I also have some questions, but let's start with the audience question, just out of respect to the audience. Okay, how does creating these community hubs, oh, that's probably for you, Ana Paula, and new social infrastructure help a city where 60% of the population is living in poverty? I had a version of this question of when you say include, so I will just add my question to this question. When you talk about inclusive communities, at least here in Toronto, a city that is basically growing as a result of massive immigration, when we say inclusive communities, it's basically representation of the diversity, social background and wealth is part of it, but it's definitely not the extreme of what Erin covered. So can you speak to the creation of these social hubs, and from a, when you say inclusive communities, what does it mean in your context?
Yeah, sure. So there's been a lot of efforts done, for example, in Medellin, the case of Medellin, of how through social infrastructure you can tackle inequality and poverty, in Latin American cities. And that's something that also here in Mexico recently the government has been building a lot of social infrastructure in the most marginalized areas, no? So that is something that we know that by creating spaces where the people, which live in poverty can go and make stronger the connection between them, and like having different activities for them to do instead of joining, for example, like drug dealing activities, like adding all these different social infrastructure. It's something that has been working a lot. It's also something that people in these areas, like they can think of like be proud of their territory, So this is something that has been really successful, as I said, in Medellin, and now in Mexico we're doing the same efforts. So the government has been doing a lot of projects recently, and we think that in the state of Mexico, where this project is located, we also have a lot of informal settlements and marginalized areas. So this was really exciting, like to see that our client, which was a private sector, like they were interested in creating these type of spaces. And I know that this is only kind of like a concept, design, but they knew that there is something in terms of mitigation that the government asked them to do. So what they said is like, instead of, I don't know, like sometimes private developers, they say like, okay, in terms of mitigation, I'll do like a car-driven I don't know, effort, no, or something like fix some streets or things like that. And they said like, well, let's use those mitigation efforts to create this social infrastructure for the people around it, no? And that's something that becomes like really inclusive, because at the end they're gonna be, people in your community, in your neighbors, no? So the best thing is like how to integrate these other areas instead of just like create a fence, no? Because like that's what happens a lot in many of the developments here in Latin America, no? They do these gated communities that it's like, oh, I just want this security gate, no? And that's not working, no? Like people would only say like, oh, I want to go into that gate, no? So something about like opening the doors and creating this open development that gives even like some social infrastructure to them, we thought that was something like really successful, no?
Speaking of existing communities, there's another question here. How do these existing, and maybe that's a question to you, Monica, as well, but how do these existing communities respond to planning initiatives, to a new master plan, to a new intervention in their community? Because here it doesn't it's not very smooth very often. So Monica, Ana Paula, whoever wants to answer, go ahead.
Actually, in the case of the master plan I showed, the community responded really well and exciting because it was a residual space that didn't allow for any interventions or social community services or housing or infrastructure around the area. No, it was this area that it's around the master plan actually doesn't have infrastructure or anything. So they responded really well. And actually in the workshops we did with the community, they were really excited that there's going to be actually a park that has a second function as the water driven, etc. No,
so Monica, when you said one thing in your presentation, you said it looks very car oriented or car friendly, because that was part of the requirements in this specific context of the master plan. Generally speaking, and maybe that's a question for all of you, I'm sure Ana Paula, you deal with that as well. How, like, walkability, pedestrian friendly, like these concepts that we, as urban designers are obsessed with, how challenging is it to bring this concept into planning, or it's just so far away that it's a really hard fight to pick up? Because for us, I will just say, and I'm not sure who's in the audience, but I will just say, like, I feel it is often very challenging to come to a municipality and you try to do, a right of way that it will be narrower than the transportational guidelines, and there's like, no, we need 6 lanes, we need parking here, and you end up having a much wider street than you really need. So are those challenges that you face either from the community or from municipalities or your clients to make things more truly in pedestrian scale and level of friendliness?
I think things are changing now after the COVID, no? In Mexico, I think many people were like car driven, like really interested like in shopping malls, no? And then eventually with the COVID-19, like people started to realize that open spaces were really valuable. So now I mean, in terms of when we work with the private sector, I mean, they sometimes start to realize that adding these type of like pedestrian areas and open spaces can give like more value to their project. So that's something that it's only starting here in Mexico a little bit, no? And then in terms of the government, I mean, Mexico City has been doing a lot of efforts into creating to be less car driven, no? But yeah, for sure, there's always like this struggle for us to keep always focusing a little bit more into pedestrians and bike uses, no? And a little bit just to ask your question that you had earlier, for sure it was like a big challenge, and as I said, like our project was really concept design, and something that eventually we would need to do was like this participatory process with the communities around. But the interesting thing was when the client looked for us to start doing this project, he had already started talking with the ejidatarios, which they are, in Mexico, we have a lot of communal lands in the outskirts of the city. So many of those urban settlements and informal settlements were part of these ejidatarios. So that was something interesting because we started like to talk a lot about the project with this leader, like social leader, no? And the idea is that while the project continues, like he would be like a good connection to talk with the rest of the communities, no? That's something that we do a lot of here in Latin America, no? It's really good to have a kind of like an actor that becomes like really important to the community. So that's a good way to socialize it.
Yeah. Erendira, there's a question for you. Did you see it? Are there waterless systems for disposing human waste?
Oh, I'm sorry, I don't see the. Oh, yeah, I see the question. Are
Yeah.
there waterless systems?
I understand the
Yeah.
question, but maybe you do.
Yes, there are, but they are not so used and more in Mexico City. Right now it's something, it's not a new technology, of course, but it's something new in terms of like sharing those kind of strategies that people can do. And most of the people are using these strategies, but not in Mexico City, not in the city, but like outside the city. And I hope that this technology like gets better every day in the future so everyone can use it. But for now, it's not so common.
Okay, that was a fascinating presentation that made me feel very privileged to have urban challenges in Toronto that I feel are very much are solvable in the hands of politicians. Like our housing crisis could be, in my personal opinion, be solved much faster if we had the political leadership. And it's a reminder that there are some challenges that are within our hands and some that are so complex, and it was for me it was a fascinating 40 minutes. Thank you very much, Ana Paula, Monica, and Erendira. The recording of this webinar will be on Smart Density's YouTube channel. Have a wonderful and happy holidays. And if you are heading to Mexico, I hope we gave you some food for thought. Yeah, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.